Didn't see you there. Of course, you are just a camera on a tripod, so who knows how long you've been there. I'm Franklin Walther, Digital Services Librarian at the Mill Valley Library. And like you, I'm stuck inside right now. And it's intense in there. But outside, spring is in the air. And so are the yeast and bacteria that'll help us make sourdough bread. Let's do it. Ah, sourdough. What sets sourdough apart? We've already given it away. It's that tangy, complex, sour flavor that results from the natural action of a vibrant colony of Saccharomyces yeast and various lactobacilli and acetobacilli having their way with a big wad of flour and water. You might think it's too complex to attempt, but it's not. You might think it's a lot of work, but it's mostly waiting. You might think the subtlety in your hands and shrewdness in your judgment necessary to produce amazing loaves may never come, but it will. It's art, it's science, it's magic. It's sourdough. We have to start somewhere, and where better to start than a starter? Maybe you've heard about San Francisco bakeries that have been jealously safeguarding their magic starters for 150 years, or have read crazy, complicated directions for starting a starter with pineapple juice and precise measurements and multiple days of specific instructions and thought to yourself, whoa, that must be highly advanced and completely inaccessible, and there's no way I can do that at home. Wrong. Let's blow away that misconception right now. Get out your locking trapper keepers because here's a top secret recipe for starting a sourdough starter. Are you ready? Are you alone in the room? This is for your ears only. Okay? The secret is flour and water. No, really. What about the precious magic yeasts, you ask? And those bacteria? Pop quiz, hotshot. They're already there. Yes, that innocent-looking bag of flour already contains the yeast you'll need, and so does the very air around you. As we're all suddenly acutely aware during the coronavirus pandemic, microbes are everywhere. Your skin teems with them. Wash your hands. But back to the starter. Now, I'm going to try and get you baking bread with the minimum of fancy equipment. I'll tell you what I use, but I'll always try to offer alternatives too. I'm super flexible and chill. Except for one thing. If you expect to bake with any degree of seriousness, you need to be weighing your ingredients, not measuring them in a cup. Measuring ingredients by volume is imprecise and downright dangerous. Instead, get a kitchen scale and know for sure how much whatever you're putting into a thing or some stuff. Scales are cheap, believe me. They're so cheap. They're as cheap as me, and people tell me I'm possibly the cheapest there's ever been. Anyways, get you a jar in which your starter will live. Eventually, your starter will go through pretty wild changes in volume once it really gets active and stable, so make sure there's enough room for it to comfortably expand threefold or more. You don't need business attire here, you want post-cocktail hour stretch pants. These jars work well for me and have standard-sized plastic tops so I can swap out either the jar or the top once they just get too funky and encrusted with dough bits and need a long soak. I hail from the northern lands of Canada, where we use the metric system, which is more precise and orderly than your barbaric inches and drams and hogsheads, eh? And precision is important in baking. Now you're going to set your scale to the proper metric system, God save the Queen, and add 50 grams of flour. What kind of flour, Franklin? Ideally, bread flour. This is flour that has a higher than usual protein content, which is good for the type of bread we'll be making, because it allows for more structure and chew. That's precisely what you don't want in a cake, and there are specialty low-protein flours for that. But that's not what we're baking today. I've been using Bob's Red Mill and King Arthur bread flours a lot lately, But I don't know if you've had this experience, but in the grocery stores I've been to during the pandemic, there's no toilet paper at all, and there's no flour at all, except for the very most niche quinoa, coconut, strange-o stuff. No offense to strange flours. So use what you can find. From bread flour to all-purpose to whole wheat to rye, they'll all work to get a starter going. Okay, now add 50 grams of water. Doesn't have to be anything exotic and fancy. If you can drink it, soak in the yeast. And now we mix. Give it a good stir and get air in there. I love these silicone-covered jar spatulas for getting into the sides of the jar and for easy cleanup, but an ordinary household fork is also just fine. Cover your jar and go do something else for 24 hours. It's the next day, and you're back. What has your starter done? Probably not much, not on day one. What do you do now? Dump out the starter. Franklin, you screech, we just started that starter. Chill, my high-strung friend. What we are cultivating here is a colony, nay, a thriving economy and society of various pleasant yeasts and bacteria. What will help them thrive is a consistent schedule of feeding. Consistency is important in training, whether it's a puppy or a starter. Dumping the spent food will sacrifice the tiny lives of millions of our colony's residents, yes, and if the denizens of Starteropolis were human, we would be beastly indeed. But we're going to have to adopt some bee colony thinking. What matters is not the individual drone, sorry Larry. What matters is the superorganism. Serve the superorganism. How much do you dump out? Whatever falls out. What sticks to the jar, that you keep as the seed culture for the next feeding. But how much is that? Who cares? What matters is that the amount of new food is the same each time, and the proportion of flour to water is the same each time. Do the dump and feed every day, and take notes or snap a picture of what your starter looks like when you do it. Oh, and give it a sniff. Over time, you'll notice a change from a bland, flowery smell to a complex bouquet of microbial funk. Take notes on the odor too, why not? Imagine what wine you'd pair it with at each stage. You'll have to be patient. It'll take, maybe a week before the tiny critters have sorted themselves into a stable society. At that point, what you'll notice is a cycle. During the first few hours after feeding, your starter will grow and aerate. You'll see bubbles in its structure, if you store it in something transparent, of course, and the top will form a dome shape. This is a starter on the grow. Nothing gold can stay, of course, and eventually the starter exhausts its new food, activity slows way down, and it all falls into recession. Sorry, kid, it's the business cycle. Your starter isn't dead, just in an overfed torpor. You'll notice it turn liquidy as time goes on. Forget a feeding, and what you'll pour out the next day will be very liquidy and very sour-smelling indeed. You might even find a layer of separated liquid on top of your starter, if you've been negligent. You're still probably fine. This apparently is called the hooch. In most cases, you can just stir it back in and resume your feeding cycle. Most cases. Your starter society is self-policing. Most of the time, your yeast bacteria team will beat up and eject any no-goodnik microbes trying to horn in on their territory. Let your nose guide you. A strong, sour smell is to be expected. If you smell your starter and get a horrifying punch of spoiled cheese raunch right in the nose, your starter may have fallen prey to an abundance of leuconostoc bacteria or other undesirables. At this point, curse fate, dump all your starter, wash your jar, and start again another day. After an appropriate period of mourning, of course. You'll probably find, once your starter is healthy, that the cycle goes a little too fast. It's too easy to miss the best time to use it to make bread. At this point, change the game. Reduce the amount of water in each feeding to 40 grams. So 50 grams flour to 40 grams water. Your starter's activity will slow because you've gone from 100% hydration to 80% hydration. What was that gobbledygook? Important gobbledygook. Remember how I talked about how important proportion is? That right there is some baker's math. Let's discuss before we bake our actual loaf. When is 100% not 100%? In a bread recipe. Check this out. 100% flour, 72% water, 2% salt. So this bread is 174% of what? If I know one thing, you say to yourself, it's that in entirety is 100%. And I'm sure as shootin' that my bread is not 72% water. You might need to sit comfortably. Let the eyes close. Breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. If the mind wanders, gently bring it back to the breath. All right, now you're ready. These percentages are relative. The total flour in the recipe is always 100%. If our recipe is 72% hydration, that means there's 72% as much water as there is flour, which means for our bread, if we have 500 grams of total flour, we have, let's see here, carry the 1, quadratic formula, 360 grams of water, and the salt is 10 grams. Why the funny percentages? Because we're describing what kind of bread this is going to be. Enriched breads can have butter or milk or sugar or eggs or what have you in them. But today we're talking about pure flour, water, salt, starter, sourdough. So it's a simpler equation. That 72% hydration figure makes our bread wetter than, say, a baguette, but drier than, say, a ciabatta. Wetter doughs have an easier time stretching and producing big, lovely, airy bubbles inside, but they're also trickier to handle. So this, I think, is a good starting place. Enough blather. We're here to bake bread, by Jove, so let's stiffen our upper lips and get stuck in, what? The first step is to get your starter at the right time. You want to use your starter early-ish in its cycle when it has that nice dome and a lot of optimism about the future vis-a-vis availability of flour and water and the price of pork belly futures, etc. It's a bull market. Casually eye your starter, and when you see that it is ripe and ready for action, fall upon it like a savage leopard and harvest its bubbly goo. First, get you a non-reactive bowl. Stainless steel, glass, ceramic, perhaps gold, and your scale, and measure 90 grams of starter into your bowl. Please note this is after you've dialed back your water to 40 grams per day, okay? The idea here is to get 1 feeding's worth out of your starter, and the excess serves as the seed culture for next time. After you get this dough together, feed your starter as normal. But the dough. Add 320 grams of water.
Excuse me, Professor, but you said earlier there were 360 grams of water in this dough.
Yes, Poindexter, but the starter already has 40 grams of water in it. Go polish your pocket protector, okay, clever clogs? Now then, stir this up but good, breaking up and distributing your starter through the water. Don't worry, microbes can swim. Now the flour. I recommend sneaking in a little special flour for a certain je ne sais quoi, a little extra interest in the flavor profile. Whole wheat, rye, maybe some ancient wheat varieties like Coruscant wheat or some einkorn. 10% of the total flour weight will give the bread a little kick of interestingness without changing the character of the dough too much. Add a lot of whole grains and the bread will be a different animal. And more on that some other time. Let's try and stay focused, which can be hard. Did you guys just see something shiny? So I added 50 grams of Coruscant wheat and made up the difference with bread flour. All in all, 450 grams, because we already had 50 in the starter. Whew, look at all that math. Are we fancy or what? I'll produce my trusty spatula now and mix it into a shaggy dough. I don't need to fuss over getting it completely homogeneous or, God forbid, knead it for 10 minutes to build structure or whatever. Ain't nobody got time for that. Fortunately, we're going to let the amazing power of waiting around do a lot of that work for us. And our first trick will be covering the dough. Don't worry about being airtight at this stage, and walking away for about half an hour. We're not being lazy, we're doing an autolyse, allowing enzymes in the flour to start breaking sugars out of its starches through the magic of chemistry, making everything in the bread more gooderer. After our little wander away, we're back, and did you notice we haven't yet added one of the ingredients? Yes, it's salt. Salt is not invited to an autolyse, but now we want it. Add 10 grams of those little crystals of good old sodium chloride. It's time to get down to business and mix, and I'm going to use my mitts. Say hello to Mitt Romney and Francois Mitterrand. These fellers are going to get wet so the dough doesn't stick and perform a mixing maneuver I learned in Ken Forkish's book, Flour, Water, Salt, Yeast. I'll turn the bowl with one hand while folding pieces from the outside of the dough mass to the center and giving them a gentle shove down. I'll go around like this for a while and then perform the pinch. Embrace your inner crab and pinch the dough into pieces between your thumb and index finger. Or if you are indeed an actual crab, simply use your claw. Repeat this process. Fold to the middle while turning, then pinch. Oh, I don't know, 3 times? You'll feel that the dough is beginning to become more coherent and the salt will be distributed through the dough. Now it's off to bulk ferment. Ferment because the yeast and bacteria are really going to get to work, and bulk because if we were some highfalutin bakery, this would be the stage where all the dough is one enormous mass before it's divided for baking into a bazillion loaves. We're just doing one, however. Okay, into an oiled, coverable bucket or bowl. Cover more airtightly this time. I'm trying to avoid using plastic wrap because, it's horrible. So I stick to my lidded bucket. Now we go away for another half an hour. It's been half an hour, and now it's time to continue building structure. No, we don't need to knead, but we're going to do a stretch and fold instead. Watch me pluck Mr. Dough out of the bucket and stretch him and fold him thusly. I then turn him 90 degrees and stretch and fold again. I then turn him 90 degrees and stretch and fold again. And so on for, well, only one more time. This early on, the dough probably won't feel much different, except for being more relaxed and stretchier. We're going to repeat these folds at least 3 more times, though, at the same half-hour interval. It's like kneading in extreme slow motion. It's gentle attachment parenting for bread, except we're going to eat the child at the end. Oh, Lord. By your last stretch and fold, you'll feel the dough aerating, getting bigger and puffier. We don't want to abuse it and collapse its air bubbles much more, so your final folds will be gentler. Don't rip the poor thing to shreds, you brutes. Treat your dough with care. Then let it bulk ferment until it's roughly doubled in volume. I wish I could give you a certain time frame, but it depends on too many variables. It'll be some number of hours. How's that?
That's vague enough to be useless.
Quiet, you. Watch for bubbles in the structure of the dough and a doubling in size. There's another option. If you have the dough ferment in the fridge, fermentation slows way down. It's totally plausible for dough to ferment for 12 hours or more in the fridge before reaching the same level of readiness, and you'll enjoy the reward of the bread being even gooder. The complex chemistry of fermentation reaches its finest expression when taken slowly. But enough of that. Let's fast forward to shaping time. Just as we mixed in 2 phases, we're going to knock this lump of dough into a loaf shape in 2 phases. First, flour your countertop some. No need to go wild. And dump your precious onto it. Gather ye rosebuds while ye may, and also gather the quote-unquote corners to begin stretching the blob into a future spheroid. Turn your bundle so that the collected seam is down and shape a bit more by tucking your hand edges under the bottom as you turn, little by little tightening the top. We're not going crazy here, just working the dough into a rough sphere. Now you guessed it, walk away for 10 minutes or so. Let the dough relax a bit, gluten strands get literally uptight when you work them, and come back and continue after your break. At this point, sweep away the flour on the counter, but do flour your hands. We actually want the dough to stick a little in a controlled way because we're going to tuck our pinkies down under the dough as we pull it toward us. It's a complicated motion to explain, but you'll notice when you get the hang of it that the dough ball starts stretching itself. If it's still sliding across the countertop, this won't work. Let it rest a bit and get rid of that countertop flour. Or you could still do the tuck and twist. Okay, it's shaped. Now it goes into something to help support it as it does its second rise, or proofing. I have this fancy cane or wicker banneton lined with linen. but you could use a bowl lined with a kitchen towel that's fine threaded and dusted with flour. A half and half blend of white rice flour and bread flour is great for this purpose because of rice flour's water absorption characteristics. Plop the loaf in with the seam side up. Another way of saying this is invert it. Yet another way is to say that what will be the top should now be the bottom for the times they are changing. Cover the top, and this puppy proofs for probably like 2 hours room temperature or 12 or so in the fridge. How do you know when it's proofed? The classic test is the finger poke. Poke the loaf. Your pokin' divot should fill in, but slowly. If it fills in right away, the bread's still really springy. It doesn't have enough air in it yet. If it doesn't spring back at all, you've gone a little too far. Bake it right away, but fear the worst. Baking time! We actually want to make an oven inside an oven to bake this bread. We want to simulate a hearth oven with thick walls with a lot of thermal mass that retain heat and transfer it to the loaf. Just slapping your loaf on a cookie sheet in your oven will make the bread sad and you sad. I use this set of a cast iron skillet and a cast iron pot that fit together. They're not expensive, although they are heavy. Or you could use a Dutch oven, ideally cast iron again. Anything that seals the bread in a smaller environment will help, because for the bread to have a good time and expand freely in its first few minutes of baking, it needs its crust not to dry out too fast. We can't inject steam into our home ovens the way professional bakers do, so instead we'll capture what's coming out of the loaf itself for that purpose. Preheat the oven with your Dutch oven or similar device inside to 450 degrees American Fahrenheit. Let it preheat for an hour. Yes, you heard me. The bread's proofing anyway, just be patient. We want your oven within an oven to be truly hot when that bread hits it. Go time, soldiers! I'll invert the bread into my hot thingamy, and now I slash or score the top. I'm using a fancy lame, which is French for razor on a stick, but a serrated knife will do until you decide to be as fancy as me. We do this to encourage the bread to expand, and there are many patterns to make. I like the square, but a crosshatch is also cool, or a simple cross. Experiment. Okay, no time to waste. Cover the loaf and set your timer for 20 minutes. We'll let the bread bake undisturbed until then. Whoa, 20 minutes are up already? Shoot! All right, well, let's uncover the bread. It'll now continue baking for another 15 to 20 minutes. When is it done? When it looks done. When it has a nice crust color, and when you tap on its bottom and it sounds hollow. If it sounds dull and feels heavy, not enough water has baked out of it yet. If you want to take its temperature, it should be over 200 degrees American Fahrenheit US dollars inside. Okay, it's out. Now cool it. You are now Joe Cool. I know you want to eat that bread hot out of the oven, but don't. Don't. You have to let moisture move around inside the loaf and let it cool fully, or else when you cut into it, it will start to turn gummy. Don't say I didn't warn you. Your patience will be rewarded, my pupil, and you may never be free again of the question by friends and family, when are you next baking bread? We've only scratched the surface here, but I'll add a couple more thoughts. If you want to adapt things, your main levers, in Canada we say levers, are hydration, time, and temperature. Need to stretch out your baking time? Use the fridge to lengthen bulk fermentation and or proofing. A cold loaf is also easier to score. See what happens with more or less water in the dough and experiment with other flours for different flavors and behaviors. After all, we're all stuck at home for quite a bit more time still. Maybe we can all emerge master bakers.